Welcome back to the webcast, All Sports One Web, and we are back with the 24-25 EPL predictions coast to coast because we got Jacob joining us,
What's up, guys? Good to be back.
and we just got our Premier League predictions today, 1 through 20, who's getting relegated, who's winning it all, and let's dive right in, starting with
Let's
the
do it.
newly promoted Ipswich Town. Jacob, where are we going with Ipswich Town?
Okay, Ipswich. What a great story. Kieran McKenna, coach since 2021, back-to-back promotions from League One, promotions championship. They're in the Premier League. If they can manage to stay up, Kieran McKenna might go down in history as one of the greatest coaches. What a run that would be. I can't see it happening. Fairy tale's over. I'm putting them 20th, but it's still such a great story. I think they might be a fan favorite, kind of like Luton Town was last year. They got that Ed Sheeran celeb hype.
Will we see him in the
I
box,
just
you
don't
think?
see them.
Do you think we'll see him in the box? Home game after
Oh,
home
oh, for
game?
sure. He's going to every game. Yeah.
Yeah, I could see that 20 years, over 20 years since the last time they were back in the Premier League. I think 17th is all that they're going to want. And that will go the same with Southampton, who I am going to place right in front of Ipswich Town. I think they will be closer to 18th than to 20th, but I still think up and back down for Southampton. Last time in the Premier League, only 2 years ago, Shea Adams, Adam Armstrong, really the only ones leading any type of front line for them back then. Shea Adams leaves this summer. Adam Armstrong is still there, but he scored 24 goals, I think, in the championship. He only scored 2 the year before in the Premier League. So can he find some form, and will it be enough form for Southampton to stay up? I don't think so. Only 2 home wins all of their last campaign in the Premier League. No major signing since then. You lost James Ward-Prowse to West Ham a couple years ago as well. I got Southampton in relegation as well. How about let's give you Brentford? Where you
Okay,
got Brentford?
Brentford's an interesting one because if Tony stays, then you feel a lot different about them than if he leaves. And he hasn't left yet. So I have them as high as 14th. I think he's honestly rounding into like a prominent striker, and I think he'll get some key goals for them if he ends up staying. If he leaves, it's another story. Obviously, I'd have them farther down the table. But, that's one of the risks of doing these predictions before the transfer window ends. But, you got to go with what we're working with right now, yeah.
Would you have them being relegated if Tony leaves?
No. There's
Still
not
too much.
Quite, but a few places down, probably.
Another return to the Premier League for Leicester City. Jamie Vardy, 18 goals with Leicester City in the championship last year. Still there. Build him a statue. They should just spend the entire year building him a statue and just celebrate that.
Start the statue now. I agree.
Start it now. Steve Cooper already getting called for his head. It's been preseason, and he's still getting called to get sacked. I just don't see it. They lost their manager from the championship, obviously, with Maresca going to Chelsea. They lost Shrewsbury Hall, obviously, going to Chelsea. I don't see Steve Cooper and that team staying up, so I will put them here at 18th. I think Southampton Leicester will do better than Ipswich Town, but I still got them 18th. Everton, 8-point deduction. Last year kind of had them flirting with the relegation zone for much of the season. No point deduction this year. Some key departures, but where will you have Everton landing?
Yeah, so Onana gone in midfield is tough, and Ashley Young staying is tough. They had a decent season despite those points deductions and some key injuries like Calvert-Lewin. I'm not exactly sure if he's staying. but Sean Dyche really proved himself. He's a solid manager. Keeping them out of the relegation zone last year was a huge achievement with those points deductions. I think they would have finished as high as 12th if they didn't have the points deductions, which is a solid season from what people were expecting. I've got them 13th this year, just like one under where they would have finished without the points deductions. I know they're losing, like we said, Onana, but it's just the competition of the table is a little bit different this year, and I think they finished 13th.
Yeah, and I think, to be honest, they're happy to let Onana go. He didn't really sit back kind of style. He's good on the ball and running forward with it. Yes, he can win the ball for you, but he really needs to get going. And so I think that move will help Villa out, but I think, and help Everton out as well, if they can reinvest and go more defensive like Everton would want. A team that's also super defensive is a Nuno Espirito Santo team. He is the manager of Nottingham Forest. So many additions when they joined the Premier League. They scored the lowest amount of points last year, their second year in the Premier League, and survived in Premier League history. No team has scored 32 points and still survived until last year when Forest was able to do it. I think they're going to struggle. Morgan Gibbs-White obviously played extremely well. I think he was one of the top 8 in assists last year in the entire Premier League. So hopefully he can keep it going. But relying on Chris Wood to get your goals year in and year out is going to come due. So I think they will be fighting relegation, but I think they will just miss out their 17th place for Forest. Fulham.
So I actually had Forest, just quickly. I had Forest in the relegation zone, and I think it's mostly just to explain why I did that. Jamie Vardy is Jamie Vardy, and Steve Cooper is gonna love the rematch against Nottingham Forest, and they're gonna knock them into the relegation zone at some point this season, and it's going to be glorious. It's going to be sweet revenge.
Storyline.
I think it might be just my bias with saying the King Power week in, week out. It's just such a great stadium name. You might be right. Honestly, we had all 3 teams who got promoted last year go down. It seems unlikely that that's going to happen again, but the longer teams keep getting knocked down, it doesn't help the newly promoted teams that the teams staying up keep getting TV deals and getting more money to spend. It the chasm or whatever between the relegation teams, or the newly promoted teams, I should say, and the rest of the league will get bigger and bigger. So I see your point. If you want to put Leicester City back in the relegation zone, I totally am okay with that. I just wanted to give you why I placed them on my list.
I mean, a Jamie Vardy last day of the season game winner to save them from relegation is the bow on top of the cherry on top of the cake of his career. So I would love to see
Jamie Vardy's final party.
Yeah, final party indeed. But the one thing that gets me with Leicester City, and we'll see how it goes, but last year, the championship, they started at the end of the season, started getting attacked with some of these PSR point deduction talks. We'll see if the Premier League will enact that, and they will get a point deduction like Forest and Everton last year. That is still looming for Leicester City. So I think that could drop them down. But let's believe in the Jamie Vardy party, and we'll keep them there out of the
also, like you said, Nottingham
zone.
Forest lowest points while staying up. I know they got the points deduction, but they were just they were competing against Luton, Burnley, and Sheffield, and they still barely stayed up. Like, that's not a good sign for your future.
No, and that was 12 of their points last year was against those 3 teams. So I mean, you're talking almost half their points was from the 3 teams they finished, that got relegated. So they weren't really beating those teams. Are no longer in the Premier League. So if one of these 3 teams can get a win at home against Forest, then they're already going to basically be doing better than that. So let's see here. So that gives us 3 relegated so far as Forest, Southampton, Ipswich Town. And next on the list is Fulham. No more Willian, no more Tim Ream. Welcome back to the MLS.
Right. Yeah, I'm definitely sad
where you got Fulham?
That Tim Ream. I'm definitely sad that Tim Ream's going to the MLS. it's not good for the U.S. for going into the 2026 World Cup with our starting center back going to the MLS and clearly not going to be playing very much in 2026. Probably not a bad move for Fulham. Like I think he's 36 now, so just the U.S. just desperately needs to fill that center back hole that we have. I've got Fulham 12th and might be a little bit high because Paulinho's gone. They desperately need to fill that CDM void. I think that they'll end up signing someone. They've been in talks with Calvin Phillips. I think that will be actually a really good fit for them. I think they would love that signing. I think it would be good for Calvin Phillips too, to rebound his career. He needs to. If they don't, so this Fulham's a little bit different than the other teams like Brentford. You're like scared if someone leaves, they're not going to do as well. Fulham, you're scared if they don't fill the holes that they just created, they might do worse. But I'm pretty confident they're going to sign someone. We'll see though. I've got them 12th for now, but
we'll see how Emil Smith Rowe does there as well, anchoring that midfield. We'll see if he can get things going after making that move from Arsenal. I don't mind Fulham being that high purely because I don't know who would finish higher. I think as we get into more of these teams like Wolves, for example, they lose Kilman, great center back. They lose as he goes to West Ham. They lose obviously Pedro Neto, who even though he missed so many games, he missed almost half the season last year. And then some of those other games, he was either returning or getting injured in those games. So he wasn't, fully healthy for even the 20 games that he did play. Still contributed to over 20% of the goals for Wolves last year. Can they rely on Craig? Yeah, exactly. Absolutely incredible. I'm super excited for him to come to Chelsea. They got Craig Dawson, 34-year-old in the back line that they're going to be relying on. Yes, he's great on set pieces. Yes, he can do a job back there, but will it be enough to keep them from conceding more goals? They let in 65 goals last year. I think it's going to be too much. So I'll have them finishing right above Leicester here in 16th place, maybe battling for relegation. I think I
put them 15th. I like that a lot. They're really going to miss Pedro Neto. Even though, like you said, he was gone for a lot of the season and they still had a pretty good year. I mean, they beat City last year. They finished 14th. But I honestly think, they say you need some luck to win the league. I think, Wolves needed some luck to finish 14th. They had multiple games during the year where they just got points late and just overperformed. And I just don't think they'll have that same amount of luck, especially without Neto the entire year. It'll be a huge miss. He's such a good player.
Yeah, and Kilman in the back has been fantastic for him. So I agree. I think they're going to be around that relegation, but I love Gary O'Neill, so I think he'll save them. And so let's move on then to Bournemouth. Where do you have Bournemouth finishing?
Bournemouth losing Solanke is a huge miss. They were struggling for goals at the start of last year, and then Solanke got hot, and they were on a great run of form. And it was honestly, don't get me wrong, the midfield helped with some nice assists, but he scored a ton of goals, 19 goals, and I think they're really, really going to struggle without him. I have them 17th in my list.
Oh, okay. Right above Leicester, moving up the table. Look at them go. 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. So that completes the bottom two tiers of the table as we move on to Crystal Palace. Oliver Glasner taking over in February of last year. And boy, did the tables just turn. They won unbeaten in the last 7 games in the Premier League, including a 4-0 win over United. They beat Liverpool. They beat Aston Villa, I think, last day of the season. Trounced Aston Villa, I think, if I remember correctly. Now, they lose Elise to Bayern Munich. but they still have some quality with Eze, with JP Mateta, even though he played for France in the Olympics. They went all the way, so he's going to probably miss
Edouard, yep.
Yeah, so you got Edouard to bridge that gap until JP comes back after the first few games, after he gets his holiday from the Olympic final that he played in. So I think they went unbeaten in preseason. So if you combine that, they haven't lost since they played Manchester City back, I think, in March or April. It was the last time that a team beat Crystal Palace. They lose Elise. They bring in young kid Sarr from Marseille to kind of fill that role. He is not the same player. He's not technically as good. Seems like he can hold the ball well enough to be able to, beat his man and play a pass in to the front line. But, we'll see how that goes. But I think when it comes to these teams, I think I have them finishing above Fulham, maybe closer to that top half finish. I think maybe they can crack the top 10 here. I think they'll just keep rolling. This start of the season will get them a good cushion. They'll get JP back and will be good to go after that.
So I think Crystal Palace is in a good spot right now. I totally agree with that. I had them 9th. I agree with that.
Yeah, there we go. So top finish for Crystal Palace in the cards. Is it in the cards for the new manager Lopetegui at West Ham?
I would not be happy if I was a West Ham fan right now. I watched them play a preseason game against Crystal Palace in Florida a few weeks ago, and they just look dreadful without Paquetá. He's obviously got those betting allegations looming over him. There was an announcement recently that there will be a verdict on these betting allegations at the end of January 2025. So luckily, that means no one's going to buy Paquetá and you get to keep him for a few months. But unfortunately, he could have a lifetime ban by the end of January, and then you have to play half the season without your number 10. And West Ham just does not look good without him. They have 3 wins, 3 draws, 11 losses since Paquetá joined. He's just the glue for that team in the last few years since he joined. I think he's not going to play well in the first half of the season because he knows that these huge allegations are going to potentially get him banned. I've got West Ham 11th. They're not cracking top half of the table for me. Yeah.
All right. So that above Fulham?
I had them just under Fulham, but honestly,
okay. Just under.
Nice. I would be okay with either.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, I'll give them above.
Or just Fulham better than Fulham. I meant to say.
Just better than Fulham. Yeah, I agree. I think that worse than Crystal Palace, just because of the holes that you mentioned that Fulham have. A team that has so many holes every year, it seems like, in midfield is Brighton. New manager this year as 31-year-old Fabian Hürzeler is coming in from second division Bundesliga club. Well, I should say Bundesliga club now that he's been promoted. Yes, I know, right? Could you imagine taking over as Brighton after De Zerbi? They lost Pascal Gross in the summer. They might lose Gilmore to Napoli as talks are ongoing there. Every single year, they just lose their midfielder. Caicedo gone, McAllister gone, Bissouma gone, Trossard gone, all in the last couple of years. They have a great model of bringing in youth players, and obviously João Pedro has been absolutely fantastic. What a screamer he hit against Villarreal in the preseason. So I think they just do things their own way, and it seems weird, and it just always is going to work. So I will put them right after Crystal Palace here in fighting for that top half finish. But I like Palace over Brighton, Brighton over West Ham to finish.
That's exactly what I have on my list right there. I love that.
Yeah. So I think,
but like you said, they need to fill that midfield role. Like Gross is a huge loss for them. Like they got Gross, or they started playing Gross after McAllister and Caicedo left, and they still felt like they didn't have a good control of the midfield. I mean, losing McAllister and Caicedo is a huge loss for pretty much any team. But now there's even a bigger hole there, so they're gonna have some trouble if they don't figure that out.
Yeah, Yeah, Matoma, João Pedro, I think they can score enough goals to stay above some of these other teams that we think are lacking in attacking options. One team that was not lacking in attacking options last year at home, Newcastle. Where do you got them finishing this year now that they're no longer in Europe?
Right. Yeah. So Newcastle, they had a couple great Champions League performances against PSG last year, but I definitely think that having that knowing you're playing PSG around the corner and trying to focus on the Premier League game at the weekend is tough for any club, and they didn't handle that so well. They also had a fair amount of injuries last year. So the hype of Newcastle has kind of dwindled from a couple of years ago. I think they finished 4th. I'm going to put them at 8th, but I'm not exactly sure if they can keep people healthy. I think Anthony Gordon's been linked to maybe be exiting. Hopefully he stays for them. That's a tough one to place for me.
Ooh, wow, 8th. That is one we are going to disagree with. And the reason why we're going to disagree with that is because next is Aston Villa. And for me, they made Champions League positions last year. But having said that, let me go through the list of teams outside the top 6 that have made a European place since 2020, 2021. Okay. And their following season. Newcastle, 2023, 2024, or 2022, 2023. They finished 4th. After Europe, they finished 7th. That's why this year they're not in Europe anymore. Only Spurs, 2021, 2022, they finished 4th, and then boom, back to 8th. Every single year, you can look at Brighton, you can look at Leicester, you can look at these teams that finish in the European
Villa played in the Conference League last year on Thursdays. They did play in Europe technically. It's a different level of competition than Champions League, but they did play in Europe last year technically.
Yes, they did. And I can give you that. But what I cannot give you is the fact that they lose Douglas Luiz. Kamara is going to be injured for the first portion of the season. They lost Diaby as well. Luiz and Diaby accounted for almost the same amount.
Yeah, that's a big one.
And Diaby and Luiz almost accounted for the same amount of goal input almost as Ollie Watkins. So it's like you took Ollie Watkins out. You have a Champions League, which obviously the club is going to be rocking for. They're used to winning the Champions League back in the day. The fans will still remember some heritage there. It's going to be similar to Newcastle, where they are going to give all of that. They're excited to be there. Ollie Watkins is going to be focusing in on the Champions League, in my opinion. I think it's going to be too much for him. You look at the history of teams, Spurs, Leicester, Brighton, all these teams who finish high up, they get knocked down once they get into Europe. And so I am actually going to put Villa in 8th, and that will jump Newcastle up, because I just do not see, they bring in Onana, they bring in Ross Barkley back at Villa. But it's just, I just don't think it's going to be enough to replace Douglas Luiz, especially Diaby as well, but especially Luiz. And I got Villa finishing 8th.
I believe in Unai Emery, I think a little bit more than you, but you make some good points.
He wants the Europa League.
We'll see.
He wants the Europa League.
Yeah.
So, I mean, this is outside of it, but Champions League is different. That'd be interesting. He's in the Champions League, finishes 3rd, goes on, wins the Europa League. They're going to be focusing on that. They'll finish 8th. There we go. We got the whole story lined out there. Let's go to Spurs. As you mentioned, signing Solanke. You can't really see the Spurs logo, but I have them here. They're here. Where you got Spurs going?
They're there. So Spurs signing Solanke, I think a couple years ago would have been looked at with some raised eyebrows, why are they doing that? But now Kane is obviously been a huge hole for them. They signed Timo Werner last year, but I've never thought of him as an actual striker. I think he was playing on the wing anyway for them mostly. And they had Son in kind of a false 9-ish role. Signing someone who can get goals was a huge need for this team. They've got James Maddison, Timo Werner feeding Solanke. I think that's a great signing. I believe in Postecoglou. I think he knows exactly what he wants out of his team, and I think that's something you don't see from every manager. Like, he's super confident in his play style. Some would say maybe too confident in his play style. You look back at that game against Chelsea last year, which honestly, I think that game ruined their entire season. They got 2 red cards in that game. Van de Ven and Madison went off injured. It just ruined their. I think they were tied in first before that game happened, actually, and it just went down. They were tied with Arsenal in first, and it just went downhill from there. Van de Ven I'm so high on him as a center back. He's a young superstar, and if he cannot re-injure that hamstring, he's going to have a great year. We're going to be talking up with him. It's with one of the best center backs in the world. I'm putting Tottenham in third.
Tottenham to third. I like it. I think, second year of a system, he knows exactly what he wants. Big Ange, and I think they're going to come together. I agree. You get Son more on the left now to play with Solanke up through the middle. It's going to be perfect. Richarlison can come in and come out wherever you need him to fill
or
in,
just not come in,
or just not come in at all. That would work. Even though so I like them. They're up here in third. We will have to remember that because we can't see it very well. A team we can see, Manchester United, losers in the Community Shield, as Erik ten Hag looks to bring in reinforcements. They just signed Matthias de Ligt, as well as Mazraoui from Bayern Munich, the right back, center back pair that both worked under Ten Hag at Ajax to kind of help complete his Ajax team that he's managed. He's now managed Lisandro Martinez, Onan, Van de Beek, even though Van de Beek now is gone, and adding de Ligt and Mazraoui, both now former Ten Hag players. If he cannot perform with his players that he's managed on top of that they bring in, I think Ten Hag will go at the end of the season. But I think the first part of the season is the most important, because it looks like to start the season that they will have to play Casemiro, Johnny Evans, 37,000 years old, and Harry Maguire as a 3, because they pushed over Martinez, at least the left back, during the Community Shield. I think the pair will be.
I think Luke Shaw's going to start. Actually, they were talking, but
he'll come back. On. Okay,
but he's going to get injured in 2 games after that anyway. So
yeah, that's what we're relying on, right? Is Luke Shaw not to get injured, and so. You got, even if they do Luke Shaw on the left, you got Martinez and Maguire. Martinez and Casemiro is going to come back, play center back. Who knows? Obviously, Kobe Manu has been fantastic, and it's going to be great to see him and see how he does. But I actually have United finishing. I think if they could get everything clicking, they will do well. I just think it won't be enough, especially with the Conference League. United have not played well in Europe. I think it's going to bog them down a little bit. I think in the beginning of the season, they're finally going to get their feet under them with de Ligt getting integrated, Mazraoui getting integrated, who is great. They lose Wan-Bissaka, who's more defensive. They add a more attacking style right back in Mazraoui. I think that's good for them. I just think it's going to be too much. And so I got United finishing 7th. Where do you got Liverpool?
Okay, so let's take a step back and remember where Liverpool was 9 years ago before Klopp joined. They were struggling pretty much every year. Obviously, there was that Stevie G slip when they were finally close to winning the league, which was very sad for them and very not sad for other teams. But Klopp was always the guy that really melded the team together. They've obviously had Salah, one of the best wingers in Premier League history. VVD is staying also. I think Salah is finally getting a little bit older, and just without Klopp, I really think they're going to struggle this year. Arne Slot seems to be a decent guy. I don't think he has enough experience to coach a team like Liverpool. I don't necessarily believe in him to get top 4 in his first season. I have Liverpool at 5th.
What about Darwin Núñez? 9 times he struck the bar last year. If those just go in.
Yeah, that's the $1 million thing.
Front of Newcastle, finishing just outside Champions League in 5th place. All right, that now brings us to the mess that is Chelsea Football Club. A current team size of about 48 to 53 players, deals breaking down every single day, causing cascade effects, causing Conor Gallagher to go to Madrid, be amongst the facility, come back and maybe trade with Chelsea, only to possibly be sold for João Felix, who also was loaned to Chelsea a couple years ago and in a permanent move, all while the Napoli chairman is in London to negotiate a transfer for Lukaku and Osimhen. What will happen there? More players in, more players out. 8 goalkeepers on the roster currently, with Petrovic, the main starting goalkeeper last year, the budding star that all Chelsea fans were excited to replace Sanchez, is now set to leave, with Sanchez set to play as the starting keeper to start the season under Enzo Maresca. And even though we both share a birthday with Enzo Maresca, I am not connected with this philosophy. I tell you, you watch our team, our center backs, our goalkeeper. Yes, he's supposed to be able to play out with his feet. Yes, our young center backs are supposed to be of the knowledge of knowing how to play with their feet and play out from the back. A pivot player, either left back or right back. We'll see when Cucurella gets back in, if that's Gusto on the right, Cucurella on the left, who goes into the midfield there. But we can't play a 5-yard pass. It doesn't matter who's playing where. We can't play a 5-yard pass. Badiashile can't play a 5-yard pass. Sanchez can't play a 10-yard pass. Fofana just forgets where he is some of the time. And Levi Colwill played a majority of the season as left back. We all screamed for him to be a center back. He played great when he was in center back last year. And now, I don't know if it's a mentality thing or something, but he looks kind of lackadaisical there in center back in preseason. So we'll see who gets the start to start the season. But if we can't play a 5-yard pass in the back, we won't be able to play this system. It worries me. We have so much talent. Pedro Neto hopefully will go on that left-hand side. Obviously, Cole Palmer coming back, Nkunku being healthy, Enzo hopefully picking form to play like how he plays with Argentina, Caicedo, Lavia is finally healthy. That front part of the park, I think we're actually suited well. If we bring in Osimhen, that's just going to be so great. So I think talent-wise, we have enough. It's just, can we adapt to the system? Can we play as a unit? And can we not leave acres of space like we did against City in Columbus a couple weeks ago, like we do even against Wrexham and Celtic, where we get a little bit of pressure and we fold like a house of cards because we can't make a 5-yard pass. I am hoping we'll have a similar season to last year. Poor start, great second half of the season like we did last year. I'm hoping that's going to be our MO. We have to win the Conference League. We have too big of a squad, too talented of players not to win the Conference League. So I think we'll get the Europa League next year. And I think we will also finish in the Europa League. And to do that, that means we will bump Liverpool up here to 4th place. And that leaves us with the final 2 contenders. I think everyone's contenders for the league. So as a City fan, you shall go first. And tell me, where will Manchester, 4-time Premier League champs, finish?
Unprecedented 4, going for unprecedented 5. And I honestly believe it's going to happen. They're going to win 5 in a row. I'm putting them first. Losing Alvarez is going to hurt a tiny bit. I'm not too worried about it. Savio coming in will give us some nice talent on the wing. Remember the name Oscar Bob, though. He's going to have a huge breakout season. This kid is absolutely unbelievable. He's going to have a great year. I'm calling it now. We still got De Bruyne. Vardiol was a great signing last year. He's really rounding into a super solid and consistent starter. We've got the player of the tournament for the Euros in Rodri. City is just too good right now. And also, I have to talk a little bit about Arsenal because I have to explain why they're not going to win this year. they need to sign a striker. It really comes down to that. Kai Havertz as your go-to guy to score goals. Obviously, Saka scored their most goals last year, but Havertz as like your false nine slash striker is not going to get the job done. I went back and looked through some seasons, and in the last 15 years, only 3 teams have won the league without a 20-plus goal scorer. 2 of them were City with Pep. Pep's mastered the false nine. I don't think Mikel Arteta can do the same. I know he pretends to be a little Pep clone. He's not a Pep clone. He's not nearly as good. The other team was Liverpool in the COVID year. And they had Salah score 19 and Mane score 18. So they had a ton of goals. Arsenal scored a decent amount of goals last year. I understand that. It's not all about that. It's about having a striker, a player you can count on for those big games. If they went for it against City at the Etihad last year and scored a goal and didn't sit back like they did, they would have won the league. But they didn't go for it. They didn't have that. Arteta didn't expect one of their players to step up and score that odd goal to win the league. I think City's going to win 5 in a row.
Wait, what's that? That's Arteta bringing Pep over to his house to pickpocket the Premier League trophy? Always be alert, Pep. Always be alert. Declan Rice getting his I Love Arsenal keychain stolen as Arteta pickpockets the Premier League trophy to take it
This
back
is why
to
you
the
gave yourself
Emirates.
the last
Give
pick.
me Arsenal.
Oh,
Premier League
great.
champions.
You're playing this really
there
well.
You go. So
okay, well, you got the last
all
pick.
jokes aside, you okay. Well, you're focusing on the wrong end of the field. No 20 goals a
Plus
year
goals,
striker. Okay, they don't have that. Yeah, plus striker finish. Yeah, exactly. They don't have that. But what do have? They have one of the best defenses in the Premier League. Only 3 times has a team finished with a better goal difference than everyone in the league and failed to win the Premier League. That was 2017-18 Liverpool did it in 18-19, right? And that was they finished 1 point back of Manchester City. In 1920, Liverpool had the best goal difference or the lowest amount of goals against the following year. They won the league. Arsenal last year had the second best goals against, or had a better goals against record than Manchester City. They lost the league. So next year they added Calafiori, who's going to be, I think, going to be playing as a left back. They're basically going to be playing 4 center backs across the back line with Ben White on the right, Calafiori on the left. Zinchenko will be able to play left back.
Arteta copied that from Pep also.
Oh, of course he did. But Zinchenko is going to be able to push in when they're playing low block teams. But I think this is going to be the best defense in the Premier League by a mile. I think only 29 goals against last season. Saliba, Gabriel, that partnership is the best in the Premier League, hands down. 29 goals against. Raya's only getting older and more experienced. I think he's going to be hitting his prime and getting better. I think they're going to start the season so well, and I think that is going to be the difference. Their defense is starting with a lead. They're not going to follow the Pep system. They're going to follow the Jose system. Kill everybody in the start of the season and coast with a point lead. City has Rodri, who's played 70 games over the year and a half. What if he goes down? You're bringing Calvin Phillips. He's going to do the same job that Rodri's doing. I don't think so. I think the start of the season
is still scary. Yeah.
Oh, even Nunes. And the last 2 years, after 9 weeks, Arsenal had a 1 point lead and they were tied with Manchester City. And then they ended up losing. As the season went on, the gap got bigger. City was able to catch up and surpass them. The biggest lead they ever had was after 18 weeks. They were 7 point ahead of City. I think to start this season, Arsenal's going to start maybe 10, 13, 15 points above City when we get to December. And they're going to be able to ride that out with this new defensive system that's going to be playing with each other, allowing Zinchenko to play against low block teams, Calafiori getting integrated by then and playing left back when needed. Obviously, Tomiyasu can come in. We'll see what other signings they do, but the core group is the same. And all I got to say is watch out, Pep. There he is. He's going to pickpocket the Premier League trophy, 4 and done. And then Pep can ride off into the sunset. Arsenal to win the Premier League. And there you have it. There are our Premier League picks from us at the webcast. It is great to be back with you guys. We got NFL coverage. We got Premier League coverage all throughout the season. So come back and join us. And until next time, have a good night.